Hello and welcome back to another episode of me talking to you through a camera and a magnificent microphone. This microphone is actually really nice. I do enjoy it a lot. I need to figure out new positioning for it though. Anyway, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about some ideas that could help you delve into the ambiance of your storytelling. Now, this is specifically going to be for interactive storytelling. This is storytelling that you're going to be doing with people around a table, probably some dice in hand, some miniatures on the table, perhaps, unless you're doing theater of the mind, in which case you're going to need dice and probably some paper, maybe a screen of some sort for the Master of Dungeons, potentially. We're talking about D&D, because why not? I love D&D. I love D&D. So how can you elevate your D&D game? You can't. You can't. You're perfect at it. I'm just kidding. No, there are a couple of ways. The first way that I've found personally to elevate your player's experience is throw out your shame. You should have no shame when you're DMing. I've said it before. I think or on this channel in I think my behind the screens failed series. The series I still want to do at some point, but I just don't have the time, and I don't have the team that I need to be able to put together the behind the screens vision that I have. So maybe one day, maybe one day, but not anytime soon. In fact, one way to really get your players pushed forward into this experience, especially role-playing, is to get into it yourself. If you're going to get into it, you have to adopt the personality, envision the personality. Become the emo kid from high school again, where you're dressed up like some Naruto character or something. Don the cosplay without the costume. Or if you got the costume and everybody's into it, don the costume, man. Why not? Shameless. Be shameless. Now, obviously, you want to be conscious of the comfort levels of your players, but you also want to make sure that you're providing an environment that they can build on, that they can have fun with. They have to know that they're okay to shine, right? No success should ever push down somebody else's success. If you're going to be successful, serve as a beacon of the weirdness that people are allowed to exhibit. Now, you want to, again, be sensitive of some of the topics that could come up in that, but for the most part, if you're shining bright, you're going to be encouraging them to shine bright, and that is what you're looking for. So, don the cloak. Experiment with accents that you wouldn't normally use. Contort your face, your mouth, your hands. Reach out across the table and grab at nothing. Or perhaps you take a regal look into the aspect of your RPG, your role-playing. It doesn't have to be a true region. It doesn't, even if you are emulating an experience in the modern world, say you're in the UK, you do not need to have a specific location in mind. Most people don't care about that. Most people want it to be just different enough from their view, their recognition, that it is different. They know generally where it's supposed to be, but you don't have to be like, well, this is specifically from London, and it's from South Side London of neighborhood block, whatever. I don't know their zip codes if they even have those. I think they do. I'm not cultured. Ignore that. But make it different. Try not to be offensive, but make it different. You know, it's about making it feel as though it is transportive, right? You want to transport them from the table to wherever they're going to be. And that could be in another country on Earth, or it could be in Faerun, or it could be in space, or whatever. It could be literally anywhere you want it to be. But if you're playing alien races, You may not be speaking at all. You may have to be a DM that gives subtext. So you may come in with a says, "You have unimpressed him. You've disappointed him. You must now die. Roll initiative." Get weird with it. Because if you throw your shame out the window, what do you think your players are going to do? They're going to look at you like, bruh, this is cringy. Yeah, they might. That's okay. You know why? Because cringy can be kind of fun, actually, and really encouraging, because suddenly, I mean, you're already at a table with a bunch of D&D nerds. How much weirder is it going to get? It's going to get weird. Make it fun weird, though, right? So, number 2, introduce audio. Now, I'm not saying music. You don't need to have music trudging through the entire thing. That can get arduous and actually very difficult as a DM to do, because you almost have to predict some of what your players are going to do. And to a degree you can, because there's certain story waypoints. If you're going through a book, I'm pointing or gesturing down here because my D&D books are in that general direction. But generally speaking, if you're going off of a book, your players are going to have to hit certain waypoints in order to get to the story at some point. Excuse me. That being said, if you're doing just an off-the-cuff kind of homebrew style campaign of D&D or Pathfinder or Starfinder or Spellbreaker or whatever they are, you can kind of come up with some generic things. There's a load of free-to-use, and I say free-to-use because I'm a content creator on the platform YouTube, where it's public. I have to be very conscious of what I'm allowed to show and what I'm allowed to play on the internet. But there's some other not so free to use samples out there for distribution, but they're Creative Commons, or you're allowed to pull them down and use them for whatever, that you could apply to your campaigns. It's called ambient sound, and there's a number of places to get them. I've gotten them from Ben Sound a couple of times. You can Google just random like D&D ambient sounds. Some of them they'll try to get you to pay for, others whatever. It is what it is. But take a look around. I've got a couple that I'm going to play for you in this video that are very specific to a certain campaign that I'll be running. And it's not spoiling anything, but I think that it lends itself to some really cool ambiance, because in Rime of the Frost Maiden, there's going to be some traveling through the snow. So there's going to be something that sounds a little bit like this. Or perhaps you're entering into a temple, and this is not necessarily in Rime of the Frostbane because I haven't gotten super far into it, but there was a really cool soundbite that I found while looking for some applicable sounds, and there was a temple with a choir, and this is what that sounds like. And then on top of that, you've got some that are a little bit heavier, like maybe a storm has blown through, specifically a snowstorm for Rime of the Frostmaiden, or maybe there's an ice cave. Here's those sounds back to back. Now you can just imagine if you have a Bluetooth speaker, and it doesn't even have to be an expensive one. You want one that has a little bit of a dynamic range, but I can, I will link in the description the one that I have, or a variation of one that I have that I've really enjoyed. There are two editions. One of mine died, and I bought the newer edition, and it's been pretty solid, actually. And they're water resistant, which is super nice. So if somebody spills a drink or whatever, you're A-okay. Yeah, I'll throw that in the description. These ambient sounds can play through the minds of players and fill the gaps in conversation when people are thinking about things, kind of setting the tone, right? When you think about movies, there's very rarely unintentional dead space in the audio, right? There's very rarely where it's just a, right? Because that doesn't serve a purpose unless it's very intentional and it's setting up a climactic point coming up later. Or, yeah, there's some storytelling things that go into that. But for a D&D campaign, you could just play that for a few minutes in between conversation points. When the DM is talking, the players have to decide something, or they're not really collaborating. They're walking through the snow, or maybe during dice rolls. Just kick that on real quick. Just little play button off to the side. You're all set. You're good. Beautiful, right? So that's point number 2 that you can use to your advantage in a D&D campaign, right? Cool. Now for point number 3, how to engage your players. Number 3. This one's a little bit different, right? Because it's a little bit harder. This one takes a little bit more prep time, but it's something called potions. Now, these don't have to be hard and fast potions. It could just be buying some tea leaves. It could be, making some tea or some coffee ahead of time that players can only consume under certain scenarios. Maybe it's, obviously be careful of allergies if your players have any kind of allergies. It's something along those lines. You want to make sure that you're being conscious of that. But it could be tea, like oolong tea, with turmeric in it, or turmeric, however you pronounce that, which probably wouldn't taste very good. Maybe it's a bitter potion. Maybe it's supposed to be a very sweet potion, and it's just not super palatable, or you want to make it to period. You can make some simple syrup, which is used in cocktails pretty heavily. You can buy some, but it's really cheap to make it. It's like equal parts or like 2-to-1 sugar to water. And you just boil that in a pot on your stove. Just watch it. Once it starts bubbling up, kill the heat, and it'll reduce down pretty nicely. And then you can turn that into this really syrupy, it is syrup, this really thick potion. You can use some food coloring to color it, and then you can add whatever flavors you want. Vanilla extract to make it sweet, or make it, actually, I think vanilla extract on its own is bitter. So you can make it sweet and a little bit bitter because it's simple syrup. You can add a little bit of soda to it and flatten it out, but make it really viscous. You could add, spices or seasonings or whatever. You can make it spicy. Maybe it's a potion of heating, and you're giving them some physical heat, and because they're in the cold. Or maybe it's a mint drink and it's cooling them off, and you add some peppermint to it. Like peppermint oil or peppermint extract or something along those lines. Maybe it's a bar or a ration that they have to eat, and it's literally just, you went to the store and bought some generic Dollar General brand or something like that granola bars. It doesn't take much, but adding a little bit of food, this tactile tactile sensation, this physical object to hold on to, gives them just a little bit further of that. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this every time, but it might be nice to have that off to the side as a little ace up the sleeve. Maybe they're just not grasping the weight of this. They're trying to trudge through a campaign section where they just feel as though they can rest anywhere, or they just feel as though they've got these rations, they can just eat it and they are healed up immediately. Well, that may not be how rations work. Maybe they get healing over time. Maybe they don't get healing at all. Maybe it drains them over time. Maybe this potion does something fantastic, but the drawback is it makes them vomit like they just drank Epicac. Well, you don't want to give them actual Epicac, but you can give them something pretty putrid, something pretty bitter, or something along those lines. If you want to have a lot of fun, if you have a mortar and pestle, if you don't, I think you can just use a plastic bag, like a rolling pin or a dowel, and just crush up some hops. And you can infuse simple syrup with hops, or infuse the water that you're going to use to make your simple syrup with hops. You can make it super bitter or super floral with hops without any kind of alcohol or anything like that. So some ideas. Teas, coffees, syrups, things like that are actually pretty easy and usually fairly cheap to find your way around something if you don't need it for the expensive side, like trying to find jade tea or authentic matcha or something like that. chill. You don't have to go that fancy, right? Am I right? So think about it that way. There are a number of options that you've got for that. Now, you may be thinking, Steven, these are all great ideas, but can you prove that they work? No, try them out. Lazy. I'm kidding. I have a specific story behind one. Specifically the audio. That's like the biggest one. I've usually gotten pretty weird with my role playing and my contortion and stuff like that. I'm trying to get better about it and trying to throw my shame out the window. That's not an easy one to do. But if you want evidence of that, check out Matt Mercer and how he plays his characters for literally any role that he's in. And there's another one from the people that did College Humor. I can't remember the DM's name, but they had a DM camp or a D&D campaign that was pretty good, and he did an amazing job of acting out the characters and being very weird with it. But it was like it worked. It was because it was so weird, right? But the audio specifically, I ran a campaign once again for my former boss, my wife, and my sister and her husband, boyfriend at the time. It was a not too far into the future dystopian kind of thing, zombie apocalypse campaign. It was meant to be kind of a one-off. I was hoping it would go longer than that, but I figured it wouldn't last more than 1 or 2 sessions, so I didn't plan ahead a ton. But the idea was that they were going through a city that was not quite decrepit, but there were like some department stores you could loot. Actually, I think it was with my mom, not with my former boss. I think it was with my mom that was playing that one, which was a blast. It was really fun. But they were weaving through department stores, and they were in and out of buildings left and right, trying to dodge groups of zombies that had huddled around food previously and stuff like that. And they managed to make it in, and they were barring a door, and they were looking for guns and weapons of some sort. There were some misunderstood ideas of how to go about role-playing their characters, which was on me. I was still a pretty young DM at the time. But in the background, I had this little wedge Bluetooth speaker playing zombie crowd sounds. Muffled a little bit through a wall or through like glass or whatever, but they were in a department store with the door barred, and there was just a horde of zombies out, and you could hear this and randomly one would crop out and go, hey, or something like that, right? And it just kind of added this texture to the environment, reminding them that it wasn't just this empty space where they had to kind of imagine the visuals and tune out everything. That they just had this stuff input into their ears all the time. And my brother-in-law still talks about it. He loved that. It was enough to ingrain him into that side of the experience, that aid, which was really cool. And I want to use that again, especially going into I'm going to be referencing it a lot, my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. I have a lot of plans for it, and I'm betting that most of them are going to fall through, but I can plan on them now and then strip away the stuff that's too much work as we go along. I'm really stoked for it, though. But that, anyway, is 3 ways, or there are 3 ways, that you can help boost your campaign. It's not too difficult, but it takes some thinking out of the box and maybe a little bit of prep work up front. If you're playing D&D, though, odds are you're used to a little bit of prep work, especially if you're the game master. If you feel like you need any kind of help with this stuff, you can always reach out to your players too. Maybe you don't have time to make simple syrup, but maybe your one of your players does. Maybe you don't have any Lipton tea, not a sponsor, obviously, at your house, but somebody has a box of it because they were just recently sick or something like that. Have them bring that over if they're not opposed to that. Granola bars, maybe you just need to run down to the store and grab some if you got some money. But distribute the load a little bit, because remember, it's everybody's game, not just the DM's game, and not just the house or the host of the event game kind of thing. So anyway, I hope that helps out. This was kind of a flying by the seat of my pants episode, because I've kind of kind of been trying to think of more of the content I wanted to display for storytelling. And I've got a couple of ideas, but I want to pan them out a little bit more in my head before I present them to you, because I think that you are worth the time that it takes for me to actually prepare something. Ignore part of that for this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know the like, you know the comment part, you know the subscribe. Let me know if there's anything specifically you want me to talk on for storytelling or for D&D. If there's any questions you have, any comments, concerns, anything, throw it in the comments. And if you really enjoyed it, make sure that red subscribe button is now gray, because it's one click away. It's free. And if you find that you don't like the content later, you can always unsubscribe. Thanks so much. And again, until next time, have a good one.